Then type your name into chat. Let us know your name and where you're from. You should also have your Teams Google Doc open on the side in a browser. And make sure that you're using a device with a keyboard. So an iPad is fine as long as you have an external keyboard and you can type, because we're going to be workshopping our startup ideas today. Right. All right, look at all these people. I wish I could shout you all out, but there's too many entries. It's so nice to meet you from New York and India. South Africa is represented. Armenia is represented. Argentina, amazing. Excellent, excellent. Fatih, are we good to start, or do we need to wait a couple more minutes for more people?
I think we're good to start.
Okay. Yes, wonderful. And you can see my screen clearly? All right.
Everything is
So
good.
like I said, my name is Olivia. I am a senior partner and co-founder at a company called Prototype Thinking Labs. We're a business design and innovation lab that's based in San Francisco in Silicon Valley, and we teach a method that we originally developed at Google X, which is the moonshot factory of Google. It's where we saw things like self-driving cars and Google Glass and Project Loon. We work with mostly Fortune 500 and 1,000 clients, but we also train startup founders as well. And before we get started, I just want to let you know that eventually a lot of people like to connect with me. Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter is fine. My handle is here. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, I'll send my links later, but just make sure that you write you're from Draper University. Otherwise, I may not accept your request because I'm not sure who you are. Okay, with that said, welcome everyone. Today's lecture is about prototype thinking. This is a technique that helps you build very rapid prototypes in a short amount of time. So I want to start with a question. Who here is familiar with design thinking? Anyone? You can type into chat. We'll be using chat throughout the session today to be answering questions. If I don't ask you to unmute yourself, then you can be rest assured that answers will be through chat. Awesome. Okay, some people are familiar. Yes. Alex says right. Perry says yes. Oh, Catherine went to high school based out of the Stanford D School. Excellent. Who here is familiar with lean startup as a technique? Okay, so. And if the answer is no, that's completely fine too. We come from the culture that saying I don't know is a very good response. We like to identify what we don't know. Awesome. Okay, who here knows Sprint, the book or the technique? It comes from Google Ventures. Nope. All right, yes. There's about a 50-50 split. Great. So prototype thinking takes the best aspects from design thinking, lean startup, and Google Sprints. And what we've done is we've combined it with other techniques that we've developed to create this really rapid and inexpensive and lightweight process. So when you come up with an idea, you can immediately test it in the first few hours of conception so that the path that you're going on is one validated by true information from real users. And so when you're building your product, you're not just building it in a vacuum, you're building it in a way that is sticky, that really meets people where they are in reality, and eventually will be successful in the market. And that's essentially what we want to do. We never want to be in a situation where we're building a service or software or product, and only 4 months later do we actually get in front of our users and they say, you know what, this doesn't work for us. So one of the first use cases of prototype thinking was with Google Glass. Does anyone remember Google Glass when it first came out? Like, just give me a show of hands, or you can type into chat. Okay, I see some here heads nodding. Everyone's like, yes, I do. I did too, because I'm from San Francisco, and we all thought this was so cool. You could go into a conference, forget everyone's name, and someone's name would hover above their head. You could be driving in your car, not have to reach into your pocket or your phone for directions, and Google Glass would display the details of where you're driving, the directions, the turn signals across your dashboard. So you wouldn't even have to touch anything or move anything or even turn on a GPS. Does anyone know where Google Glass is today? Like, where is it? Do people use it? I see hospitals, nowhere, labs, dead. These are all excellent guesses. I especially like the guess from Jahar. He said, oh no, someone said space, it's in space. So Google Glass is an interesting story. The least known fact about Google Glass is that it's thriving as an enterprise innovation. You see it in places like surgery in hospitals, in operating rooms, in automotive repair, in airplane technician repair, in manufacturing, when people are doing the physical work and then seeing the specs overlaid on their physical work. I'm going to show you another picture. It may blow your minds. I'm going to show you the very first picture of Google Glass's prototype. This is a picture that one of our earliest partners took of Larry Page when they were first building out the experimental prototype on day one. And I'm going to ask you another question because I love asking questions. How long do you think it took to build this very first prototype of Google Glass? Okay, 2 years, 1 day, 1 week, 3 days, 3 years. Awesome, these are great guesses. And they range. Typically, a disruptive innovation like this can take 6 months to 2 years. This took 4 hours, so half a day. And I'm going to show you how it was done. So the challenge that led to this creation was, what if Google was in your brain? That was the prompt that the team was mandated with. And I'm going to show you over here, first, the very first experiment. This experiment over here was to decide of how would it be if we were to create a hands-free experience. So we have a sheet protector. You can buy that at a grocery store or an office supply store or corner store. That's connected to a coat hanger, which is bent to go around the top portion of your neck, and then the bottom portion rests against your chest. That's also connected to a Pico projector and a notebook. And you can't see it here, but the X team actually borrowed a woman's handbag, a crossbody satchel from one of their colleagues on campus that day, so they could put the netbook in the purse and then walk through the world holding this contraption, projecting digital information onto their physical environment. And that example was to help them understand what it would be like if we could walk around the world, essentially almost hands-free, and see digital information and text overlaid into the real world. Here's the second experiment. Hair bands are connected to fishing line and then run through a contraption with a coat hanger, whiteboard, and chopsticks to essentially tag up a presentation clicker so you could swipe left or right in your email inbox. And so this experiment was to give us the example of what would it be like to be Jason Bourne in Minority Report, where we're manipulating software in front of our face. We can swipe right, we can swipe left, we can move the information. It's such a cool experiment because as you're seeing here, the big question of what would Google be like if it was in your brain is actually broken up into subcategories and sub-questions. And then we solve for them independently. Here's an example of how the team would prototype and test what it would be like to wear glasses. Now this is in the early 2011s to 2012, so there's not a lot of AR or VR glasses on the market at the moment. So what the team did is they took modeling wire and they shaped it into the frame of the glasses. Then they cut clay in the exact same weight of the electronic components and then played around with where they would tape the clay on the glasses. And in just a couple of hours, they came up with this incredible insight that our human nose holds a lot, our human nose doesn't hold as much weight as our ears. So if we want to create glasses that are comfortable for AR or VR, we have to put the weight on the back of our ears, and we can do that by adjusting the weight and moving it towards the back of the glasses. And this was such a profound insight because just in 4 hours using materials that you could pick up at a craft store, the team discovered an insight that any company building face-related hardware, therefore after in the future, would have to know. So I want to tell you the rest of the story. So the X team ran hundreds of rapid iterations over the course of several months, and they came to the conclusion that there just wasn't enough information to support a consumer's day-to-day use. So they had this recommendation, they went to leadership and they said, hey, we know that we have a couple of applications, we need to build probably a couple more to make it sticky for consumers, but we have enough to go directly to enterprise, so we can launch now. And what do you think leadership said? Well, based on the story, now that we know that Google Glass isn't as well known in the consumer world, leadership said, let's go to enterprise because it's cool, we can do it, we're so smart, and let's just try it out. And even Sergey Brin, being the leader of the X team, he actually created the department, he mandated this project into Google X. He said, we have this chance, let's go for it. And what do you think happened? It was a huge flop. If you search Google Glass story right now on the internet, you'll probably see the first page of search results to say Google Glass being Google's biggest technology flop, that they still had to recover from it. And that's actually true. What happened is the team launched Google Glass for consumer. There weren't enough use cases to make it interesting enough for people to adopt it on a day-to-day basis. There were issues around privacy. People didn't want to walk around the world wearing these glasses, being ostracized for having this technology on their face. So essentially, it was a cool, sexy, hot tech toy that kind of fizzled out, and then the market didn't find a long-term use for it. So a couple of the biggest lessons that we take from this story is, first, one, there's a very big difference between a cool idea and the data that we get back. So even Sergey Brin, being one of the smartest people in the world, he had this idea that Google Glass could work. He actually had this idea that Google Glass should be red because in science fiction, apparently the glasses are always red. And also because red is the least energetic photon of light by his definition and his argument. So essentially he thought, well, if it's red, then it would be least straining on the eyes. Well, we now know that the X team actually tried that with the red sheet protector, and they quickly found out that red was the absolute worst color, because when you're wearing red glasses, you can't distinguish any other color from the red. The next thing that we learned from this story is that there's a difference between what we call a conjecture and an actual. A conjecture is an educated guess. It's hypothetical, it's an assumption. It's a great guess that we have about the world, about what we think will be true, about what we think our customers will want. Then what we have are actuals. Actuals are learned insights from directly observing real people. It's insights that we learn from observing real human behavior. And the reason why we have this distinction is because we're always going to start a business or start a project with conjectures. But our job is to test our conjectures and run experiments and then quickly get data back so we can turn them into actuals. Because actuals are more precise, they're more accurate, and they're better pieces of data to build informed decisions upon. So when people tell you to make data-driven decisions, they're actually telling you to make decisions based on actuals and not conjectures. Cool. The last thing that we learn is we're always looking for something called a magic moment. Now this is 10 seconds of magic when you're creating a visceral response in your user or your customer. I'm using this word interchangeably with customer, but a user is a person who is a beneficiary of your product or service. They're the person interacting with it. And throughout the course of this workshop, we're going to be referring to our customers or clients as our users. So in the story of Google Glass, the X team actually tested the prototype that you saw, the very ugly super first prototype, with a room full of surgeons. And the surgeons had this huge gut reaction when they first tested the prototype, because there's this critical moment in surgery where something goes wrong and you're working on your patient. And when something goes wrong, you have alarms blaring in the background. These are sirens happening, and the surgeon has to look at a screen, refocus, grab some information, synthesize it, make sense of that information, come back to where they were critically working on their patient in surgery, and then proceed with the life-saving support. And that moment is not even 10 seconds. It might be 0 seconds. It could be a split second of 1 or 2. But what's really interesting is that the surgeons tested that experience again with the Google Glass. And they went, wow, this is amazing. I have never done this before. Never have I ever been able to see my patient, have the vitals of the patient projected over the area of surgery and resume my work without looking away. And that was always a really critical part of surgery, because in that split second when you're moving away, you could lose focus and actually not be able to resume where you were working on, especially if it's like blood-saving work, it's an aneurysm, you're pinching an artery. It was amazing. So that's an example of a magic moment. We ask this question plenty of times, and we like to bring in the example of Uber. Now, I am not supporting Uber politically, I'm not endorsing them as a company, but I've just run this workshop with thousands of people and used this as a case study. So in the example of Uber, the magic moment happens when you get into an Uber or a rideshare and you get to your destination. You never even had to pick up the phone, you're just taking your phone out, you're making a couple swipes, and then the moment that you get to your destination, you don't have to pay. There's no money transfer. If you forgot your wallet, it doesn't matter. If you want to charge it on your company's card, that's fine. You just get out of the Uber. What we like to do once we've built a product or a service is we like to ask a very simple question. This is an evaluation tool. It's an alternative to scoring by NPS. It's a way to get back information on how valuable your product or service was. And so it's a very simple question. It goes like this. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is mind-blowing, like this is so cool, you're going to tell your friends and your family, you'll probably write a review about it, you'll probably post an Instagram story about it. And then 1 being so awful that you would write a scathing review about this on Yelp. And 5 being not the best thing you've ever done and not the worst, it's so. How valuable was this experience for you? So we like to ask that question at the very end of our user test, anytime after we've built a product or service. And in the case of Uber, we ask this question to you. So I would love for everyone to unmute yourself just for a split second. And if you have kids crying in the background or it's busy, that's totally fine, you don't have to. But I would like for you to tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, how valuable was it when you first hailed an Uber?
10.
0.
10.
9.
10.
Bro.
8.
8.
I hear a lot of 10. There are a couple of outliers, 8s, 2s, but the majority, thank you everyone. Keep your mic on, I'm going to ask you another question. So the majority was a 10. Now let me ask you the baseline question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how valuable is the experience of hailing a cab?
0.
5. 0.
4.
5.
1.
7.
-1.
2.
0.
-10.
Thanks guys, you can mute yourselves again. So I thought the funniest response was -1 because that wasn't even on the scale that I gave you. But as you can see from just your answers, there is a wide differential. There's almost a 5, 6, 7, 8, 10-point offset between the status quo, which is a cab, and Uber, which is a 10. So we have a concept called a 3-point offset. And essentially what it is we've found that products and services that can score 3 points higher than the current average of whatever people normally use in their day-to-day, those are products that are going to rapidly feel their own awareness and adoption. This is when things spread organically through word of mouth, things go viral, and you don't know why because you haven't put any marketing or distribution dollars behind it. That's the reason. Now, if you build a product or service that's only 1 to 2 points better, but it's not 3, it's not enough to get people to change their behaviors or their habits. So definitively, yes, it's better than whatever exists, but it actually won't change people's behavior. And that's what we want to do with a 3-point offset. So a good example of this is Coke and Pepsi, 5 and 5. There are certain industries where your baseline, your status quo is not a 5, it's not even a 7, it's more like a 0 and a 1. Think of airport security, ordering internet, canceling internet. What's worse than that? I honestly, there's so many things like taking transit in a really crowded city, and then the country is on a transit strike. Like there's experiences that score so low that if there was an alternative, if airport security was just 3 points better, it would actually blow people's minds. Thanks, Napoleon. I'm glad you like this course. I'm going to quickly take a pause because we're at the very end of the lecture. Are there any questions so far? Okay, Alex says, does this apply to clinical? If you could just type your question to chat, that would be great, because at the very end, I'll go back through chat and make sure that I have answered your questions. Does this apply to cyclical industries as well? I needed an example of a cyclical industry to see if whether magic moments would apply and whether the 3-point offset would apply, but I would imagine so. Okay, Iman asks, how do I identify what is magical about my product? Great, that's exactly what we're going to do next. So the next part of the lecture is, how do we find a magic moment? I've been talking about magic moments. They sound amazing. What are, how do we find them? And then how do we build our product or service around it so that everything else that is a distraction gets out of the way? Well, the first thing to know about creating a magic moment is that it's about creating something new. And in order to create a new experience, something that no one has ever had before, it requires thinking that is out of the box. So we can't necessarily use the previous thinking to solve a new problem. Now, a lot of people think that the startup journey in the entrepreneurship world is about coming up with one idea and that be the winning idea. And then you run with it for a couple of years, you sell your home, you go into debt, you eat ramen noodles, and then magically one day you become a unicorn. And that's just honestly a very false TV reality depiction of what startup culture is. What actually it is, it's more like this. Innovation is about trying a million different things. Half of the things that you work on don't stick, they don't work, they contradict the data that you got back previously. They may contradict the data that comes from your investors or even your leadership team. And what we want to do is we have to go through this mess. So we want to get through this mess as quickly and painlessly as possible by trying a lot of different things and using mindsets and techniques that help. Sorry, there might be someone unmuted. Fatih, do you mind making sure? Cool. We want to use thinking that allows us to try and experiment at rapid speed. So here's an example. If you want to build a bridge as a human, we can do this pretty simply. We know what it takes, the specs, we know how long to build it, how strong to build it, how to make it beautiful, and then we can pass that information on to an engineer and they can carry forth that work and it's somewhat guaranteed to work. Now, when we're solving for a magic moment, we can't necessarily do that because no one essentially has solved that problem before. Maybe humanity hasn't even solved this problem. So we're going to try all of these different options and see what works from those different options. So that once we try in volume, if one of those options works, then that's all that matters. That's amazing. And we're going to run with that idea. And that's going to be the thing that leads us to being truly innovative. In a technical aspect, here's a concept that will help you understand this theory in a more granular way. So the theory is called rate-based goals. It's a strategy, actually. And what we're saying is that entrepreneurship is a numbers game. If we can maximize our rate of learning by reducing the time it takes to try new ideas, we're going to speed our cycle of learning and we have a competitive advantage against other people. So here's a little bit of math. We all have about a 5% chance of picking the right idea, no matter how smart you are, even if you're Google X, even if you've been in the game for a long time. If you come up with an idea and you run out of the gate and you pursue it as a company, only 5% of people will be able to actually have a successful product or maybe even IPO. But if you take that idea and you try 12 different variations of that idea, your probability of success has now gone up to 45%. Now that number is actually even better because through those 12 times that you tried different variations, your learning compounded over time. Now, if you tried that idea 50 times, your learning goes up to 92. So your probability of success is almost at 100. It's so good. It's asymptotically approaching 100. It's very, very good. We also have a lot of research that now shows you only have to test with 5 to 6 people to yield 1 standard deviation of the core information that you need to know what should be included in your first feature set. So if you're planning on building a minimal viable product or an MVP, you only need to test qualitatively with 5 people to get their feedback to know if you're headed in the right direction or whether your product or service even has the potential to have a magic moment. Okay, Alex seems like he's got a question here, or her, I'm sorry, I assumed the gender. Alex says, my question really pertains to say experiences you infrequently use. Sorry to confuse, I confuse people. Okay, no worries, that's totally fine. I'll come back to that later, but I'm gonna keep going with the lecture because we're going to shortly work on our ideas. Anna from Alien says, it sounds a lot like Agile. Yes, it has a lot of similarities from Agile software development. Okay, so here's a diagram of prototype thinking. I'm going to annotate here so you can see me. So you've all probably seen some variation of this loop. You come up with an idea, right? You build it out, you test it, you put it in front of real people, and then based on what people say, you adjust. Now, what we're trying to do in prototype thinking is we're trying to go through this loop as quickly as possible. Sometimes the techniques don't teach us to actually complete the loop. So many times people won't finish the loop and they'll end on a test, or they actually won't even adjust. So what we found from talking to hundreds and actually almost over 1,000 companies is that it typically takes people around 24 weeks to go through this loop. They come up with an idea, they have some meetings, they write a business plan, they talk to some people, they get fundraising, and then only finally around the 20 to 24 week mark are they actually putting it in front of real people and getting feedback. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go through this loop in the next hour and a half. We want to compress this process almost like a zip file so that we're going through the loop maybe 4 or 5 or 6 times. We now know that if we're able to go through this loop and test with about 12 to 24 users, we will have enough information to make critical pivots to validate our solution. So when people talk about gaining traction and having proof of concept, it really means going through these cycles enough. Okay. Interesting, there's all these stars. Let me clear all my drawings. Okay, so to wrap up this section, because we're almost done with lecture, what we're really looking at is we're looking at this area right here between prototype and test. We use a technique called play, pause, stop to help us identify the most critical moments of the offering where it has the most risk. And then what we do is we test at full speed and we pause and stop people as they're giving us real information, real authentic feedback about our design, and we're making live iterations during the user test. That is the biggest difference between us and any other methodology that exists out there. Oops, let's see, sorry. Okay. Later, we're going to get to testing, but I'm going to wrap up this section by quickly going over some principles, and then we're going to take a short break. So, prototype thinking principles. The first thing is, don't talk about it, try it. We have a saying that if you're a smart team and you haven't solved a question in 10 minutes, you're not going to be able to solve it in 10 hours. There's just some fundamental information that is missing, and you have to go out into the world and test. The next thing is, don't worry too much about being wrong or right. It's not about coming up with the right idea. It's about maximizing how much you can learn. So early on, your KPI should be key learnings. How many key learnings have you had? If I learned 10 things and Horatio has learned 10 things and Fatih learned 10 things, then together as a team, we have learned 30 things, and that is amazing. Lastly, don't just try to make people, the numbers go up. Work to make people's lives better. A magic moment is about a moment of service. This is when we're fundamentally making people's lives better and we're improving their day-to-day. And then lastly, let's go over the 5 techniques. This is going to be a recap. We've already talked about conjectures and actuals. We want to separate them because actuals will become our decisions. Conjectures will become our experiments. We want to stay close to the medium, and that means stay close to our users, stay close to human behavior. The medium is human behavior. If we were a potter, our medium would be clay. If we were an engineer, our medium would be code. So stay close to the thing that is helping us shape our solution. Next, maximize the rate of learning by reducing the time to try new ideas. Our speed of learning is our biggest competitive advantage. Not being smart, not being right. It's how fast we can learn. Next, be concrete and specific, but don't be afraid to guess. Being a prototyper is all about being concrete. It's about removing yourself from the abstract and being able to build a prototype that has real numbers, real facts, real shape, real solution, so that we can get concrete and tangible feedback from our users, because actually that data is just way more reliable than anything else. And then lastly, nail it before you scale it. So by definition, if you're scaling, that means your model has already been proven to work. So one of the biggest challenges, actually problems that I see startup founders go through, is they scale prematurely. So they're thinking about, how do I make this work for the 100th person before they even made it work end to end for one? So make sure that when you're prototyping, you're working on your MVP, it has to work end to end for one user. And at every single touch point, it has to make sense for them. All right, cool. So we're gonna take a quick break there. Just a 2-minute break. If you have any questions, I'll answer them in chat, but feel free to stretch yourself, use the restroom, have a mental refresh, and then I'll come back at 37 minutes after the hour. Great questions, guys. Let's see. Is there any difference between a conjecture and a hypothesis? Not necessarily, but we like to think of conjectures being guesses that include information from market research that hasn't been proven. We like to include information that comes from focus groups, lightweight surveys, interviews, self-prediction. So it just is a word that encompasses more than just a hypothesis. Okay. Roman asks, is there a copy of your deck to flip through? I'm actually going to send you a link with additional resources after this workshop. It will have slides and a free guide to prototype thinking and a number of other resources. So that will be available immediately after. Okay. Yutha says, what is the barrier for good prototyping? The biggest barrier to good prototyping is having attachment to your idea. The more attachment that we have, the less willing we are to listen to other people and like really take in the feedback that our users are giving us to make adjustments. So the best thing that you can do to be a great prototyper is to have non-attachment to your idea. And that can be sometimes hard because it's our baby, it's our brainchild. We want to see it being right. But if we're willing to take critical feedback, that in itself is the path to being successful in innovation. Tom says, is it okay if only the early adopters or users see the magic initially? Magic moments are universal. So if someone is not seeing a magic moment, it means either it's not there for them, there's not enough value for the user, or it's the wrong user. So most likely it will tell you more about segmentation of who finds a magic moment than if your product or service has one at all. Okay. Sanat says, would you compare your product's rating with the best product in the market currently? I wouldn't use your competitor as a baseline for the status quo. I would use whatever is the true function of the status quo. Like for example, if you have a SaaS product for note-taking, for example, or word processing, you wouldn't ask the question, what's the value of my product versus Evernote? Like I would rather ask, what's the value of my product compared to word processing? Just the actual service, I suppose, or thing. Okay. Awesome. These are a lot of great questions. I realize that we've gone over 2 minutes for break. So let's go back into the lecture, wrap this section up, and then get into the hands-on portion, which is actually the most important part of prototyping is not talking about things, it's actually doing them and getting in front of people before we feel ready. So if everyone's ready, let's get back to lecture. All right. So when we're building a prototype, there are a couple of different things that we need to know. A prototype is actually much more like a simulation. That's how we define prototype. A simulation, like a movie, a scene in a movie or a play. But in a scene in a movie play, there's always props. And so let me show you a couple examples of the content prototypes or props that we build. So if you want to build a mobile app, we would use paper, like index cards, to build the paper app screens. This can create your entire workflow, from the screen where you're looking at it in the App Store to the very final screen in the wireframe. If we need to prototype a pitch deck, like you're fundraising with investors, or you have a poster or PDF where you're selling services, over email, then what we can do is we can use paper. 8x11 paper works really well for this. And not everything in entrepreneurship is going to be technology. There's going to be a lot of important conversations that you have that are pivotal to the success of your design. And if you can't sell your product, then people can't experience it. So when we're prototyping sales conversations, we like to use paper to write out conversational scripts. And these conversational scripts have the most salient points of your talking points, so that we can go down the line item and see what resonates and what sticks with our user, and to see what they care about. We can also use role play to de-risk interactions or experiment with interactions, like this person who is a doctor and or a physician and their patient. We can use role play to simulate experiences like opening a meditation studio, opening a babysitting camp. You would have people role play that experience and then later ask them for their feedback and their genuine, authentic reactions. My favorite is to prototype videos. I love doing this. I take my iPhone, I shoot a video on my iPhone, and then test that video with 5 to 6 people for content, for pacing, for delivery, for imagery. And what's really valuable about that is it's expensive to go to a video production company and not know what the key points are. So if we can prototype the video at low fidelity first, then we can identify what the magic moments are, drag those to the beginning, build the video around the magic moments, and then later pass it off to someone who can make it prettier and at a higher production. And that's going to save a lot of time and energy and cost. Packaging is very useful if you're in food or beverage, or if you're in consumer products. And then lastly, if you're trying to create a new experience, let's say you want to build the next Virgin Galactic, or you're prototyping a Virgin Galactic carrier to space, well, then you can simulate what it's like to be on the craft carrier by having luggage. You can create furniture, you can move things around the room to create that experience with almost as close to real life. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of digital prototypes that have been used during the pandemic. People don't have the opportunity to test with real people in person, so they're doing this over the internet. So here's an example, and I'm going to screen. Ooh, that's very, haha. Okay. All right. So this person had an idea to create a service called bubble tea by mail. And if you don't know what bubble tea is, it's essentially black tea with tapioca pearls in it. And they used to have a boba shop somewhere in the United States. And so this person said, hey, I've got this idea. It's bubble tea by mail. I can overnight ship you these kits with the tea. So you have the tea bags, the milk, the sugar, the tapioca pearls, and then you do it at home by yourself. And if you want to do it with friends, you can do it with friends, and it's cheaper. It's $5 a cup. You have a savings. Would you go for this? This is a really fast example of a quick test and launch. And so this person actually posted this prototype in a group of 50,000 people who all seem to love bubble tea because they share the same interest. And they got over 100 to 200 responses of what would work, what wouldn't work, what the people's biggest questions were. And they took that information and then parlayed it into a website and built a website within the next day, and then sold out of kits prematurely. So there was a wait list, there was purchase orders, it was amazing. and they had the startup capital to actually go out and build these deconstructed boba by mail kits. Here's another example. Let me just go in a little bit. We have a friend, her name's Avatal. She previously used to run famous chef restaurant tours in San Francisco. So she would partner with Michelin star rated chefs. She would have people come in through these tours, get a tour of the restaurant, go back into the kitchen. The chef would talk about the philosophy of their food, the cuisine, the restaurant, yada, yada, yada. You would get wined and dine. It was this elegant experience. Now, during the pandemic, these tours were shut down and they no longer had this service. So what Avatal did is she created a PDF flyer where she still had the private chef and she had her customers and she also had her supplier with the ingredients. And she put this all together into a chefinar. So now you can hire a private chef to give you a Zoom tutorial over the internet. You can invite friends and family from all around the world. You all receive your box of ingredients, and then you get to have that experience of doing the fancy tour, but in the safety and comfort of your own home. Now, what's really cool about this is it's identical to the Bubble by Tea prototype. It has the name, the title, the description, a short synopsis of what the idea is, and the price. And this is such a great way to quickly test and refine your idea before you spend any capital building it out. So what we're going to do next is we are going to work on our very own quick test and launch prototype. And I'm going to ask someone to volunteer with me so that we can use their idea as a demonstration. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a lot of hands go up really, really fast. The first person who writes into, okay, sorry everyone, Arjun has taken the limelight. Arjun, thank you so much. You are going to be my demo. So what I'm going to need is, Fatih, can you spotlight Arjun so I can see Arjun's face over the screen for a second?
Sure. Oh,
okay. Hey Arjun, how are you?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Loud.
Great.
Okay, and you are in Quasars, is that
Yep.
correct?
Quasar.
All right. Quickly pull up your Google Doc. All right, so this is a great time. We're going to transition into the hands-on portion. Everyone should have their Google Doc open for their team. And if you don't, please find the link that Fatih has already sent you. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, let us know in chat and we will help you get that sorted out. So Arjun, do you have the Google Doc open as well? Okay, perfect. Excellent. All right, so thank you very much for volunteering and being that brave soul. I'm now going to share my screen of the Google Doc so everyone can see what I'm working on and what I'm writing. Right now, do not write anything. I will give you instructions later, but we're going to use Arjun as example. So Arjun, can you tell me a little bit about the project that you're working on or the idea that you have?
Right. So for now it's just an idea.
Okay.
So I'll take India, for example. There's a lot of, obviously the elder population is a lot in India. And generally there are a lot of them who live by themselves, and their main income is either their pension or maybe sometimes their sons or daughters provide to them. Or there are a lot of old age homes as well where they live. So I wanted to give a product that can create that is made by them, by the elder population, elderly people, and me selling them to people. So there are traditional snacks that are the best, that taste best when made by your grandparents. I'm pretty sure that's there everywhere. Your grandparents' food, when you taste their food, it's generally the tastiest. So there are these snacks that people enjoy. Generally, it's sold in packages by manufacturers. So I wanted to take the help of these people around, for example, from old age homes or people living in rural areas who are, don't have a high income, and provide a small form of income to them and sell their product to people. So that's the basic idea.
Okay, great. Give me 1 second. Okay, and what would you give as a name to this project?
I have no clue. It's just an idea till now.
Okay, well, pick one.
I don't know. Oh, old is gold, I guess, something like that. I don't know. I have no clue. I've not thought about it.
Chickpea
Anybody has
Central.
suggestions?
Chickpea Central.
Season snacks. Senior snacks. Yeah, I like that. Senior snacks. There you
Great.
go.
Excellent. Okay. Please give me in just a couple of keywords a more description about these snacks. I know you're coming up with like this idea on the spot, so don't worry if it's not fleshed out, but we're going to
Right.
try to be as specific and concrete as possible.
Hey, do you want names of the snacks, right? Is that it?
Or does it come in a box? Is this idea a subscription where you can pay a couple of dollars a month and then you get a box and there's like a range of 10 different snacks? Or
Right. So there's two ways. I've thought a little bit about it. So you can either buy a single product, right? Or you can buy like a kit where you have many snacks. So India. So my plan was basically start in my state and then go to each state and have a wide variety of snacks from every state. So people have much. So okay. I
I'm gonna
studied
pause you right there. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Right.
Who's your audience?
Anybody, whoever, like, just
anyone.
anyone.
Okay, so
Yeah.
mask.
Yeah.
Okay. And what would you charge for this kit or for the individual snacks?
Do you want in rupees or I mean
You can give it in rupees or dollars, doesn't matter. I'll do the conversion.
right. So kit would be it's I would say it's based on how many kilos each person wants. So generally, obviously, these snacks stay for a long period of time. So generally, people buy it in kilos. So maybe 1 kilo, I guess, 500 rupees for an example, I guess.
500 rupees for
Yeah,
1 kilo?
one.
Is that
Yeah.
how much would be in a kit?
Well, generally people don't buy kits; they buy separate. So, okay, if you can give me 1 second, I can get back to you. Just a second.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so we understand that it's around 500 rupees, maybe 7 USD. That's okay. This is enough to keep moving forward. So all of the people here, your classmates, are now going to be your user, Arjun. And they are going to give you feedback on your idea if you are open to it. And I think you are because you volunteered yourself. So if you could ask any of the people in this room one question about your idea for senior snacks, what would it be? Let me give you some examples. Would you go for this? Would you buy it? What snacks would you like to see in order for you to be interested in buying a kit or a box? I'm calling it a box.
Yep. Yeah, 500.
Okay, so what question would you like to ask?
So my question, what would compel them to buy these snacks? So these snacks are there everywhere. Generally, you can get it in many of these bakeries and normal groceries and stores. So what would compel them to buy my product rather than the ones you can get in stores?
Okay.
I guess that's what we want.
Great. So I'm going to reframe that question because here's a key thing. When you're testing, we want to try to avoid asking questions that start with why. And the reason being is because if you ask someone why they would do something, it tends to get people to come up with any answer to create a justification, because people want to be useful. They want to give an answer. They don't want to say, I don't know why. So a better question would be something like, would you go for this? And then from there, we can get into a longer back and forth. And we're actually going to do that right now. So let me quickly show you how we're all going to use Google Docs to give feedback to Arjun. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one keyword here. We're going to highlight it in the Google Doc. And then we're going to click on this comment section here and then type a comment. So for example, Alzheimer's. Okay, I don't know how to spell Alzheimer's. All right, so for example, I wrote, do these seniors suffer from any illness? I care about Alzheimer's. Because if you're a social enterprise, I want to know like more details about how this benefits the senior citizens.
Okay, not to sound dark.
Okay, just 1 second.
Okay.
I live in the US. Do you ship internationally? Okay, so as you can see, I am commenting so fast that I misspell internationally. That's exactly what I want you to do. You can also use this comments feature here to create a comment, reply or resolve. And we're all going to do this now because I'm going to share the link to this Google Doc in chat. So I want everyone to open up the page for number 7, the Quasar team. And we're all going to go to that Google Doc right now, and we're going to give Arjun immediate feedback. Now, good feedback could look like, oh, I would totally go for this. Oh, $7 is too expensive, or $7 is too cheap. You should be charging 20. You could also give questions about your biggest concerns, suggestions that you might have for him, or anything else that comes to mind. Like maybe you don't want this box of snacks, but you could say, oh, but I would really love a delivery of milk. So like, could you do milk? And it may not even be reasonable or make sense, but do whatever is genuine and authentic in real time. So Arjun, as you see these comments coming in, you're gonna get a lot in a very short amount of time. You're more than welcome to reply to them. You now have access to this doc, so you'll always be able to come back to the feedback. So don't worry if you can't respond to all of them at once, but you're welcome to respond or even update your project description to reflect the information that you're getting in. And I'm going to give everyone about 2 minutes to give their feedback.
So can I start?
Yes, you can start.
Right. Okay, India or religion or regional. So okay, so the idea for this.
Sorry, Arjun, we're not going to get in back and forth in a conversation, but you can use chat to reply to them because it'll be faster and we'll get through more of them. Okay,
so I just type it in the. Okay, can I reply to the comment?
If you click on a comment, you can reply to it directly.
Right. Second bottom then.
Yeah, so these are excellent questions that maybe Arjun never even thought of. Like, for example, is this a subscription? Do you ship internationally? Are they spicy? What's the taste of the Indian snacks? Are they spicy or sweet? Do you do delivery or pickup? Like, you're getting all of this very valuable information from customers who need to have these questions answered before they're ready to commit to purchasing or investigating or learning more about your product or service. So you wrap up your comments, please, everyone. I'm going to give you another 60 seconds to leave your feedback. Yeah, great. I love these questions. How do I really know these are benefiting the elders?
Yeah, I had an idea for that.
Yeah, great. Okay, wonderful. So I'll give you one more piece of information, Arjun, and then what we'll do is thank you for let's all give Arjun a very warm round of applause. So unmute yourselves, please, everyone, and just like clap for Arjun.
Yay.
Good job.
Hey, good job.
Well done.
Good job.
And that's hard to do, especially when you're performing in front of 100 people. So Arjun, that type of proactive energy of racing to the front is exactly what separates people in the world of entrepreneurship. Like, I really appreciate that you volunteered yourself, and hopefully you learned a lot from getting this feedback. Now I'm going to give you one more piece of advice, what to do with this feedback. So we typically don't teach this in an intro workshop because it's more advanced, but what we like to do is we like to take all of the questions that we have and then write them individually on Post-its, or you can do this in a Google Doc. And what we're looking for is we're going to start to separate the types of questions. So as you can probably tell, there are patterns of questions that are coming up over and over and over again. People are asking about what's the actual content. Is it spicy? Is it sweet? You know, what are the names of them? Are they healthy? Then there's people who are asking about delivery. That seems to be a really big theme. Delivery, pickup, international shipping, how much, you know, all of those details. And then we have another category, which is about the social enterprise aspect. How does this benefit the seniors? Who are the seniors? Is it legitimate? Is it credible? Can you give me more information about the status of them? How does it benefit them? Where are these seniors? Et cetera, et cetera. So when we start to cluster the information that we get back, we have identified 3 major themes: delivery, content of snacks, and the validity of the social enterprise. Now, these are 3 things that are really important to start working on. So you could, for example, build an FAQ out on your website. You could build a simple landing page that just talks about those 3 things. So that's another piece of information that I recommend is as you're testing, you're gonna get back data, start to cluster and look for patterns in the data that will show you what your customers need to hear, their biggest questions, their uncertainties, their concerns, and then you can overcome them by providing information in those 3 themes. Excellent. Thank you so much. We are going to now get ready to break into our teams. Fatih will be helping us organize into breakout rooms of our teams. And then once we get into our teams, we're going to be copying and pasting that template that you saw at the very top, staking out a portion for ourselves somewhere in the document down below, pasting it, and then filling it out. Now, there's a couple of rules I want you to follow. Make sure that you're succinct. Use bullet points when you're filling out your templates, just like I did, because it's easier for people to speed read through. And then lastly, when you get into your rooms, it's going to be, how do I say this? You're going to want to talk to your friends. You're going to be like, oh, I haven't talked to you yet. It's day 3. Like, how's it going? What's your experience of Draper? Do not do that, because when we break you out into teams, this is your opportunity to flesh out your prototype, to really think about an idea that you want to test. And so try to focus on the assignment and use the airtime sparingly to socialize. Like, try not to socialize. We can do that outside of the workshop. So we have 13 teams. You are not doing one project per team, no. Everyone is working individually on their own idea. And if you have one idea for your whole team, then you're going to work on an aspect of that idea individually. So we're all working separately. Are there any other questions? Doesn't seem like it. Fatih, are we ready to break in?
We're ready for rooms.
Excellent. Okay, someone actually does have a question. Do we only do it for one of our ideas? Yes, pick one idea. And if you have multiple ideas, pick the idea that you think you can learn the most from. Albert says, what if we don't necessarily have an idea? Everyone has an idea. We all are bothered by things in the world. Something that you've been daydreaming about, that you've been kicking around in your head. If you have an existing business, you can come up with a new feature or a new service. Yes.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna break into teams and I'll come through each of the teams to see how you are all doing.
Okay.
Go ahead, and if you have any questions, let us know in chat. See you soon.
I think everybody is back.
Awesome, welcome back everyone.
Hello.
In chat, I would like to ask, how was that experience for you? Just give me a few words. You can write stressful, fun, exciting, surprising, boring, comforting. Okay, cool. Someone thought it was comforting. Iman says, I want more answers. Wow. Excellent, amazing. Good feedback, thinking, okay. It's easy to get a lot of feedback. Yeah, congratulations. You spent 10 minutes coming up with an idea and then got feedback and then iterated on it and went through one of those learning loops in less than 40 minutes. So that's really, really, really impressive. Okay, I'm going to ask another question. Who learned something new or surprising about their idea from testing with people? And if so, what did you learn?
May I answer?
Yeah, if you want to keep it to like 30 seconds, but I think most people are answering chat, but since we have you here, let's hear.
Yes, for example, me, I was sure that my audience is social media marketing specialists are my customers, but I got awesome comment that just people will generate interesting ideas, not for social media marketing specialists, but everyone.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Now I'm going to ask you the 1 to 10. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how valuable was this experience of testing and iterating on your ideas quickly on a scale of 1 to 10?
A 10.
1 is good or 1 is bad?
1 is bad, 10 is great. Cool. So a lot of 10, 9, 7s, 11s, 5. That's fine. Yeah, cool. Okay. What is the status quo of your testing experience like? So it could be like, I don't test at all. What would you give that a score on a 1 to 10? Whatever you normally do to get feedback and test. Okay, 9, 5, 5, 4, 1, 10, 6, 7. Okay. Fair, 0 because I haven't tested. Not applicable. Great. I see somewhere between a 2 or 3 point offset. So I really like this technique. It's not the only technique that we use for testing, but it is one that we use especially during COVID because we can't get face-to-face with each other. This is a really great way to just get fast feedback on 3 things. 1, can people understand what the idea is? That's really crucial, this comprehension of the concept. Then 2 is, do they desire it? Do they like this? Do they want this enough to ultimately 3, buy it? So these are 3 key things that we're always testing for at the very early stages: understandability, desirability, and buyability. Cool. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to share where you can go with this. So if you really liked what you did today, the next thing would be to review your feedback, see what changes you can make, and then go out and test with 5 people who are in your target demographic. And if your biggest question is, oh, I don't really know who my users are, or I'm not sure who specifically they are, then you can try different users and segment them and then test with the different segments. So your homework eventually, after you've done this course with Draper, is to go and find 5 real people who you can sit down with over Zoom and have a conversation where you're getting their real feedback based on the prototype that you've developed. Now, I am also going to share a link with resources. It includes the slides from today. I've also included a free intro to prototype thinking guide that we wrote up for you guys, so you can have some more materials to read if you want to continue this work. And then we're also just, we have a partnership with Draper, so we're giving you a $500 discount on our coaching program for startup teams and startup founders, if that's something that you're interested in, for up until the month of August. So the program, the discount is available for 30 days. If you're interested, you're more than welcome to sign up for a free call with me if you want to explore that. No pressure, obviously. I know you have a lot of other things that you're learning right now, but I just wanted to offer that to you. Fatih will be able to send you that link, and if you can find it somewhere, in my browser, I will drop it into chat. So my contact information is there. You can find me on LinkedIn. And again, if you want to add me on LinkedIn, just let me know you're from Draper University. I would love to stay in touch and see where your idea goes. And I also want to say that if you asked a question today and didn't get a response, or you didn't like my response and didn't think I answered your question correctly, please feel free to ping me on LinkedIn or email, and I would be happy to take that time to really give you the support or the answers that you need. So with that said, I've got 15 more minutes. Fatih, we can use this for Q&A. We can use this for whatever you want to do. But I just want to say thank you so much. And before we leave today, at some point, I would love to take a class photo. I think that's a little, I hope it's not weird, but I'd love to just share this on LinkedIn and like let people know that we're all here together, learning this together. And if you're—
That would be awesome, actually.
that, let's do a screenshot, and you guys can do a screenshot too. All right.
All right.
Cool.
So we can have a couple more questions, and I need like 5 minutes for some announcements, but like we have 10 minutes for a couple of questions.
All right.
We can do on chat, or like, you know, we can do
Okay,
live.
first of all, let's do group our class photo first, just so that
let's do it.
I have a question if what the class photo is done.
Sure, yeah, for sure. Okay, so for class photo, just make sure you're in the frame. Anyone who does not want to be in this, that's totally fine. That's your preference. Just turn your video off, and that's cool, and I'll sort of crop them. Fatih, is there a way to hide people's names?
I
You can
don't
just
think
float
so.
it later. You're just gonna have to float it later.
Yeah, we can do it later manually. Like we can just.
Yeah.
Can you just count down to like 3, like so we on the right timing, smiling?
Yeah, of course.
Olivia, I can take it because I have the option of not having the names, and I can just send it to you if you want.
Can you please do that?
Okay.
I would like to hide everyone's names just for privacy. But there are a couple of screens, so do you mind taking all 5?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. You do it. Just let me know when to smile.
We're gonna have
All
to
the time.
Yeah. We're gonna have to do it 5 times. Okay.
Okay, put this down, Miriam.
Hold on. All right. So
I like Iman's. So cute.
1, 2, 3.
Cheers, everyone.
Okay.
Yay.
Second time.
Okay, second time. Oh my gosh.
1, 2, 3. All right. Third time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Fourth time. 1, 2, 3. Fifth time. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. I got everything.
Oh, you guys are
All
champs.
right.
That was exhausting. Okay, let's do Q&A for 4 minutes or 5 minutes, and then we'll pass it off to Fatih. So
I had a really quick question.
yeah, please go ahead, Imam.
I'm from Saudi, and it's not as when you put out a product as a startup, people are really unforgiving, unlike American culture. So how do you deal with design thinking and prototypes in cultures that are less forgiving and have less grace for startups?
I love that question so much. There's so much pressure to be right and to not fail, especially when your brand is on the line and your reputation as well. So that's why we like to prototype before the product is launched. And we do it in a way that keeps your name and your brand anonymous. So if you can sort of level set by grabbing someone who's your user and saying, hey, are you free for like 10 minutes? I just want to get your feedback on an idea. It's really rough. It's still at the early stages. I don't really know if I'm going to pursue this or not. And you can say that if it's true to you, like you customize this. So then you go to them and you run a user test that can be live if you're face-to-face or on Zoom. And just make sure that you're setting the precedent that you're at a really early stage. Any feedback that's authentic and genuine is really useful right now. And you can't, whoever it is, they can't hurt your feelings. If you just let people know that you're at the really early stages, they're not going to sort of hold you to an expectation that you have like this product or service that's live on the market. And also, you can also say that it's for a different company. That's something that we do when we work with bigger corporations. We can't publicize the name or the brand because we don't want any blowback to the brand. We'll say, oh, this is like my friend's project, or I'm helping another company test this idea right now, and I just want to get your feedback. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that. Okay.
I have a question.
Anyone with a burning question, just feel free to just jump forward and unmute yourself.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Go.
Okay, thank you. So I've always heard this quote, like you should skate to where the puck is. And so with an idea, should you just test it and get people's feedback, or should you try to see where people are going in the future and what people want in the future more? Or should you listen more to the customer feedback, or should you take your own initiative and see the future, what people are going to be in the future and want in the future?
Okay, just to add on that, if I may, very relevant question. I think Steve Jobs mentioned that people don't actually know what they want, and like if they would ask him what kind of a car they would want, they would say, "I just want a faster horse." So I think this is going along with into the future, and not just what they have in their head right now, because it may not reflect accurately what they actually want.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. There are some industries where prototyping does not work well, and we don't use prototyping because it's not our niche. Places like fashion or creative industries where taste and aesthetic mean a lot, or when the thing in question that we're trying to experiment on isn't actually a functionality question. It's not a desirability question. Like, if I write poetry, should I prototype it with you? No, because that's something that matters to me, and it's the expression of my personality, individuality. Now, there are obviously like disruptive innovations where people are not early adopters. They don't understand how this would conceptually fit in their life. Airbnb is a great example. Uber is a great example. When people first heard of the idea, they said, I'm not letting a stranger into my house. Like, what if they break something? So people sometimes don't know that they actually want it. And that's fine. If you're in that route where you're in a blue ocean and you're creating something completely new from scratch, build the thing that you want and then test it later for functionality. Test it for usability. Listen to what people are saying. But if you have this like gut instinct that this is something that is desirable, that could really change people's lives, I wouldn't hold back from pursuing that.
Awesome, thanks.
Hi.
Hey, sweet, what's up?
I'm good. Just interesting because what you said there, right? I'm the founder of a startup. It's called Luhu. We are building an in-network resource sharing application. And exactly that statement that you said there is sort of the premise of the idea of building this application. Why would I have strangers in my home? That was one of the instances that we thought of. And it was now in a post-pandemic era, it's sort of like shifting back to the mentality of how can I still have access to these resources, whether it be ride share applications, home share, knowledge, but now within a capacity that is safer and more trustworthy. So now on our application, we are looking to provide access to these same resources, but in your network as opposed to just with strangers. So now you can leverage direct connections to secondary connections to get rides, get services, to get accommodation, all in a more trusting and safer manner. So one of the major burning desire questions that we have is we are heading now to launch in the emerging markets of the Caribbean. We have done some testing, surveys, data collection, some early testing, and we are really confident with regards to our go-to-market strategies, with regards to how we plan to unroll, with regards to different pillars of the application. I just want to get a figure out or feel from a wider community. What services or what resources would you guys offer on a trust-based resource share application? So where now you can connect to people who you have a connection with purpose. Like, what resources would you guys offer on such a platform, whether it be your car as a rideshare service or mentorship now, which has shifted digitally? There are multiple areas of which we plan to branch off to in terms of updates. And this is just a great way for us to get feedback now in terms of how we can potentially unroll.
Awesome. Let me speak on that for a second. So you have done the classical thing in design, which is you ask people, what do you want? Now, let me just talk about why that question is sometimes useful, but also sometimes totally irrelevant. A lot of people don't have a concept of what they want.
Okay.
So when we ask a question like that, we're putting the onus on the customer to come up and be creative and sort of do the work of the creative engineer to come up with solutions. A good thing to do with that question is if you have that question, you would come up with maybe 5 or 6 or maybe 4 or 10, it's up to you, possible options for people to choose from.
Okay.
Because when we do something concrete, then we could say, hey, out of these 10 options, what are the top 3 that you would vote for?
Oh, okay.
You
Makes
have other
sense.
people vote on that, and then you see, based on the popularity, what patterns are emerging. Why do people like these? What are the top 3 out of the 10 options that are rising to the surface? And I also recommend doing that maybe after this workshop. You can hit up your friends and create another Google Doc, send it out to everyone, and request feedback.
Well, can I just make a quick statement? So we actually have a Google, a SurveyMonkey survey. What I can do is, would I have permission to send out to you guys to get feedback? The questions are structured in a better manner
That
with
is
regards to
a
options.
question. I'm going to let
So-
Fatih handle that one afterwards.
Okay.
But I'm actually sorry, guys. I need to turn it over to Fatih. I've been taking
problem.
all the time today. Thank you so much. If I didn't ask your question and it's still burning in your head and you're like, Olivia, you should have answered, please email or follow up with me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to do that. And Marmy, I'd love to get those photos from you at some point. So thank you so much.
All right, let's give a big applause to Olivia.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great session, I guess. So I have
Thank you very much.
3 announcements.
Let's see,
Okay,
I have one
you guys ready for it?
So when you're done, remember that.
What's up?
I have one announcement too.
Okay, we have 4 announcements. Just updated. Okay, you go first. Ladies are always first.
So we are hosting a DU open house. So I know that a lot of you are currently not in the US, but I also know that a huge number of you are going to be around or in the Bay Area. So on Thursday, July 30th, Hero City and Draper University are going to have an open house event where you can come and work out of here and kind of spend time learning more about the ecosystem, get to know the place, get to know the people who work here. So if you are in the Bay Area, you are kindly invited. You will all receive an invitation, but to those for whom it is feasible, we would love to have you.
Thank you.
So if I ride my motorcycle up from LA, I can, I guess I need to park somewhere and stay overnight. Yes. Is there places that you guys can give us ideas of where to stay?
Yeah, you can. So if you are going to be interested in coming to the open house, please get in touch with me and we will figure all of the logistics out, including parking, staying, and everything like that.
Love it. Love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. First thing that I forgot to say yesterday. So we do we get feedback for each session. So there's a channel for feedback, and I share a link for every day. And we really need your feedback to improve like sessions and everything and your time for next couple of days and weeks. Okay. So that's important. Just like after the sessions, I don't want to repeat this every time, but like, you know, whenever we're done with the session, just take a time, just fill out that feedback survey. That's anonymous. You don't need to put your name or anything. It's completely anonymous. Just tell us what was good and, what was bad, or how can we improve it? Okay. That's first thing. Second thing, the challenge of today is a team challenge. Okay. And the challenge is redesigning an existing product or a service. So as a team, you need to find a service or a product that is on market right now and redesign that with your way. So it can be, like your way. Okay, if we do this, this product can be better for these people or anything. So it's up to you, but like we want to see some frameworks and mock-ups. So it's not just like, oh, this is the product and we want to do it better. No. So we just want to, we want you guys to be more, okay, this is iPhone and like, this is, I don't know, rectangular, and we want to make a circle. And then this is our design. So this is the mock-up of new iPhone. And we want to see those designs. Okay. So we want you guys to design an existing product or a service. Okay. That's the challenge.
Is it about visual stuff or like a concept or a structure or the thing itself? Or is it just like a visual UX, UI stuff? Or
we want to see some visuals. It can be like, if it's a software, it can be UI, UX. If it's a physical product, you can just take pen and paper and, draw something new. But like, we want to see some visuals. It should be more than just like, just thinking. Okay?
And Fatih, if it's regarding services, for example, all right, there's
can we do mind mapping, something like that? It will be
well,
visual enough.
Anything helps us to like visualize and understand better the new design. Okay. That's the whole purpose. So we want to see something, and then, you know, we want to understand better your thinking. Okay. So, and the third and last, so we have mentoring tomorrow before our session. It's at 6 a.m. Pacific time, which means that it's 2 hours before our regular session time. Okay. So I'm sharing the link on general channel right now for tomorrow. So I said this already, but like I'll be opening like mentors and new slots accordingly. So I'm not going to be open like next week by now. So it's going to be like, it's usually like it's like either a couple of hours before or a day before I'll be opening the link and with the new slots. Okay. So the booking system for tomorrow is online now, and we only have one rule. You can only book one slot for the first 30 minutes. After that, feel free to fill any slot that you see available. Okay. Any questions on this? And please show up. Like when you book a time with a mentor, please show up. That's important because they're volunteering their time and everything. And like our mentors are really busy. They barely find some time to be with us. And I just don't want to burn their time. Okay. If you can do it, you can also cancel your appointment. So like once you book a time with a mentor, you get an email. If you have some urgency, if you think that you can make it, just open that email and cancel so someone else can take your spot. Okay. Any questions?
I do. I just checked with like to do a mentorship with I can't remember her name, one of the mentors. And considering I'm in Europe, it comes out to be at 6:40 in the morning. Is that going to be like?
It's actually 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. Something like that. Yeah, what time is it right now?
Because it says tomorrow 6 a.m., 6:20 a.m.,
6 a.m. Pacific time. So which means that either 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. in your time.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's in Pacific. It's 2 hours before our regular session.
All right, great.
It's actually that time is perfect for Europe. Okay, everything cool?
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so it is about the challenge. So is that a deadline? Is like a tomorrow, or like how does it operate?
For every challenges that we have, the deadline is the next session. So you have the time till tomorrow's session.
I see. Thank you.
It's a daily challenge. We're good? All right. Thank you, everyone. And I'll see some of you guys tomorrow with the mentoring session. And for the rest of you guys, I'll see you guys tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific.
Okay? Sorry, last quick question. Is there any way that for the challenge, like we can't do it individually? Like I want to work with the team, but if I could use the time to like mock up new designs for my product, but like I can't do that. I have to do something.
Do your teamwork first. Then if you have time, you can do an individual and submit that as well. We don't mind that. But like, since this is a team challenge, I don't want you to leave your team alone without you like them doing the design. So do that first, give your time and finish that. And after that, feel free to submit an individual one as well.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you, Olivia, again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Olivia, and everyone else.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia.
Guys.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.